The lantern lit. When something entered the tower, when it finally burned white, they came to collect their guide. There is a specific loneliness to the work of a lighthouse keeper. Not the solitude. Solitude can be chosen, can be comfortable, but the responsibility. The understanding that the light you are maintaining is the only thing standing between the darkness and the living things moving through it. That people you will never meet are trusting in the dark, in your continued presence at your post. This responsibility is taken seriously. It becomes, for the people who do this work long enough, something close to vocation, not just a job, but an obligation, a calling, the specific weight of being the person who holds the light. The keeper I want to tell you about tonight understood this weight as well as anyone who has ever held it. He inherited, along with the lighthouse post and the standard equipment, a brass storm lantern that the previous keeper had left with a note that said simply, "When it lights without you, you are not alone. When it lights white, it is time." He did not know what it was time for. He found out, eventually, on a night when the storms were the worst he had seen in his 12 years of service, and the light was burning as white as anything he had ever looked at, and every shadow in the tower had become a shape that recognized him. The lighthouse at Carrow Point had been in continuous operation since 1847, automated since 1991, and had been managed by a resident keeper, an anomaly in the modern lighthouse service, where keepers had largely been eliminated along with the need for manual operation. Since 2003, under an arrangement with the relevant maritime authority that Elias Corr's predecessor had negotiated and that Elias had inherited along with the position when he took it on at 44. Following a period of his life he described to the few people he discussed it with as difficult. He was 56 now and had spent 12 years maintaining the lighthouse at Carrow Point, and had found, in the 12 years, exactly what he had needed from the work. The responsibility and the solitude in the specific combination that required his full attention without requiring him to navigate the social complexity that had become exhausting in his previous life. The lighthouse was his. He was its. He found the brass storm lantern in the equipment locker at the base of the tower on his second week, with a note in his predecessor's handwriting attached to its handle. The note said, "When it lights without you, you are not alone. When it lights white, it is time." The handwriting was neat, and the message was specific in a way that suggested it was intended, rather than metaphorical. And Elias had read it and set the lantern on the shelf where he kept tools he didn't immediately understand the use of, and thought about it periodically for the following 12 years. The lantern lit for the first time on a Tuesday in November, 3 months into his tenure, while he was in the kitchen making dinner. He came into the main room and the lantern was burning on its shelf. A warm amber glow, no fuel, no source he could identify. And the room was subtly different in a way he spent several minutes trying to locate before he understood. The quality of the silence had changed. There was a presence in the room, a density in the air just to the left of the door that was not physical and was also not nothing. He said, to the room, because it seemed like the appropriate response, "You're welcome to stay." He ate his dinner. The lantern burned for 3 hours and went out. The brass storm lantern had been in the Carrow Point lighthouse since approximately 1882, brought there by a keeper who had acquired it from a ship's salvage sale and whose provenance notes had been lost in the 1941 renovation that had updated the tower's electrical systems. Its history before the salvage sale was not documented. What was documented in the journals of 3 subsequent keepers was its behavior. It lit in the presence of the dead. Specifically, it lit in the presence of the dead who had a specific relationship to the lighthouse. Mariners whose ships had gone down in the waters visible from the tower, who had died with the lighthouse in their last field of vision, who had believed in their final moments that the lighthouse had failed them. It had not failed them. The lighthouse had been functioning correctly on every occasion when a ship went down within its range. The maritime incident records were clear on this point. The light had been burning. The ships had gone down for other reasons, but the mariners had died in the dark. With the lighthouse's light visible on the horizon and in the specific calculus of grief and accusation that accompanies a death at sea, many of them had died, believing the light had not been bright enough, had not been in the right direction, had not been what they needed. They came to the lighthouse because they had a grievance. They came to the keeper because the keeper held the light. Elias understood this by the end of the first year, had pieced it together from the journals, from the behavior of the lantern, from the specific quality of the presences he felt in the tower on the nights it burned. They were not hostile. They were. He struggled for the right word in his journals. Waited. Each one carried the specific weight of their death, of the water and the dark and the moment when they had understood that the light was not going to be enough. They filled the tower with this weight and they looked at him, and they did not speak, but they were clearly present and clearly in need of something he could not fully identify. He learned, over 12 years, to manage this. He learned not to light the lantern deliberately except on the worst storm nights, when ships were in genuine danger and the presences seemed to provide something. He did not know what to the living ships in the water below. He learned that deliberately lighting the lantern invited, as his predecessor's note had implied, a specific presence to stay, to add itself to the tower's weight, to become one of the silhouettes that the lantern revealed when it burned. He learned that the weight accumulated, that the tower was heavier than it had been when he arrived, heavier with each storm season, heavier in the specific way of a place that holds more than its physical contents. He noted the shadow weight in his journals from the 5th year onward, not his own shadow, the shadow he cast in the lantern's amber glow, which should have been singular and simple, a shadow with additions, faint, superimposed figures overlapping with his own, visible in the amber light when he held the lantern at certain angles. Not frightening exactly, accompanying, as though the presences that had accumulated in the tower over 12 years had found, in the keeper who held the light, the appropriate gravitational center. His shadow was crowded. He continued the work. He did not leave. The storm that preceded the final burning was the worst in his 12 years, not the largest in recorded meteorological terms, but the worst in the specific way of storms that feel intentional, as though the weather has a grievance of its own. It came in from the northwest in October, and it lasted 3 days, and it drove 2 ships onto rocks within the lighthouse's range, and both ships lost crew. and the maritime incident reports afterward listed the lighthouse's function as normal throughout. On the second night of the storm, Elias lit the lantern voluntarily. He was alone in the tower and the ships were in the water, and he had done this before, in bad storms, and he had always felt that it helped in some way he could not measure. He lit it and held it, and felt the tower fill with the specific weight of accumulated presence. 12 years of storm-dead mariners, every silhouette he had invited to stay, every weight he had accepted into the tower's keeping. The lantern burned white. He had not seen it burn white before. The amber he knew, the amber of normal burning, the amber of presence arriving. This was white, absolute, total, without warmth, the specific visual quality of a light source that is not producing illumination so much as revealing. In the white light, the silhouettes were no longer faint. They were solid, occupying the tower's air with the specific physical density of people in a room, shoulder to shoulder, filling the circular space from the door to the lantern gallery. Every one of them turned toward him. Every one of them with the weight of their death, fully present and visible and directed at the man who held the light. Elias Corr was 56 years old. He had been at Carrow Point for 12 years. He had kept the light and accepted the dead and allowed the weight to accumulate and had not left, because the work required him, and he had found in the work the only thing that had ever felt like the correct use of what he had to give. The silhouettes were not hostile. They were not there to harm him. They were there because the white light, in the logic of the lantern's mechanism, was the signal. The tower had reached its capacity. The accumulated presences had filled the structure to its limit, and the figure who had been holding the light for them, providing the living human presence that kept the tower functioning as a gathering point, rather than simply a building, needed to be replaced by a permanent resident, someone who would not age out of the work, someone who would not eventually leave. Elias Corr understood this in the white light of the burning lantern, with the complete calm of a man who has been doing a job for 12 years and has always understood, at some level, what the job was actually for. He set the lantern on its hook. He stood in the tower and let the shadows step forward. The keeper at Carrow Point was found by the Maritime Authority's maintenance crew 3 days after the storm. The lighthouse had continued to function perfectly throughout the storm and after. The equipment was in perfect order. Elias Corr's personal effects were undisturbed. His last journal entry was dated the second night of the storm and read, in its entirety, "The lantern burned white tonight. The work continues. Good sailing to anyone reading this." The brass storm lantern was on its hook. It was burning amber. He knew, not from the first night. From the first night, he knew something which is different. But he knew what the white burning meant because the note had told him. When it lights white, it is time. He had been reading that sentence for 12 years. He had been letting presences into the tower for 12 years. He had been noting the growing weight of his own shadow for 7 of those 12 years. He kept the light. I want to be precise about what I'm not saying here. I am not saying he should have left. I am not saying the work was wrong or the acceptance of the dead was foolish or the tower's accumulated weight was something he should have refused. He found, in that work, the correct use of what he had to give, his own words. From the fifth year's journals, the lighthouse required a keeper. The dead required a guide. He was, by every available measure, the right person for both. What I am saying is that he understood from the first burning that the lantern lit for those who had a grievance with the light, and that a grievance with the light is ultimately a grievance with the person who holds it. He held it willingly for 12 years. He let the weight accumulate. He understood the end point and stayed past it. His last entry wished good sailing to anyone reading his journals. He filed the maintenance logs. He left the equipment in order. The lantern is still burning amber at Carrow Point. The Maritime Authority's records note the position as currently occupied. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Ilara, and I am your whisperer. I'll be here, waiting for you next time. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more. This has been Karma Quietly Whispers. See you soon.